Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We have a special guest for us to talk about Bills and Raiders coming up on Sunday. And legendary voice in radio sports talk, JT the Brick, joins us from Vegas. JT, thanks for being on.
Thanks, my friend. Good to be on and excited about this game. Big opportunity for both teams. Raiders coming off a win in Denver, so the Raider Nation's pretty excited for this one.
All right, I want to get later to what your perception is of the Bills and what you've seen of them, and maybe from the Vegas side. But let's start with what is going on with the Raiders. I mean, look, we see expectations, and for some teams, maybe they're not as high coming into a year. Then they get going week one, find a way to get it done. What are you seeing from the Raiders, and did week one show you anything you weren't expecting out of that team?
Well, the Raiders are better than most people thought they were. That's a real big takeaway. Raiders won 10 games 2 years ago. Last year, they won six because they're the only team in NFL history that lost 5 games in the second half with double-digit leads. So they were ahead in 5 games in the second half, and they lost them for an array of reasons. They were probably a 9 or 10 win team last year, but what would happen, they were a 6 win team. And the national media give them no credit. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in, they move on from Derek Carr. Devontae Adams is there. They get Jacoby Myers. They got Hunter Renfrow, Michael Mayer, the tight end in the draft, and the leading rusher in the NFL, and Josh Jacobs. But most of the media thought the Raiders were dead because they only won 6 games. So they won a pretty ugly game. Both Denver and the Raiders had 10 penalties in that game. The Raiders had the ball last. Jimmy G ran it out, and they won the game. They get a division win on the road, and most importantly, 7 in a row against the Denver Broncos, and most of the national media had Denver from mysteriously being a team better than the Raiders and maybe winning 9 or 10 games. So we know the Raiders are better than their record last year.
Well, we get it started with a win, and you mentioned Garoppolo. Obviously, he's in there as a Raiders quarterback. Now, when you look at Josh Allen, you look at Jimmy G, the comparison between the two, am I going to say it's close to a 180, right? And look at what happened with Josh on Monday night. Jimmy plays a smart game. He always has. And you may not see the spectacular, but you see the steady. Can that work long term? Or when I say long term, you know what I mean. In the NFL, it's a year or two or three, whatever it is. Can that work with Jimmy G and the Raiders?
Absolutely. The least of the problems of the Raiders is Jimmy Garoppolo, unless he gets banged up. You know, he's been banged up for most of his career. The years that he's healthy, his career record is 41-17 with 4 playoff wins. Now, granted, that was with the 49ers, an unbelievable roster, and before that, New England. But Jimmy G wins games. And the Raiders now are probably a year away or maybe one more draft away in free agency of getting a couple of more defensive players. I believe having one of the better rosters in all of football. I picked the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl the last 2 years. 2 years in a row, and I take that Super Bowl pick real seriously. So I believe that the Bills are still in a window to win a world championship. But going to the AFC Championship game, losing to Cincinnati or to Kansas City, that's a big deal. They're a hell of a team. They just came up short and had some bad luck. So the Raiders know, and Josh McDaniels understands how good Buffalo is. Buffalo's coming off a loss, which was a bizarre loss with the Aaron Rodgers injury, Zach Wilson. They didn't play well. And the Raiders are expecting the best of the Bills at Orchard Park this Sunday.
All right, you talk about Josh McDaniels. It's kind of fascinating the career this guy has had, right? His early shot at head coaching, then his flirting with the job and whatever that ended up being with the Colts. And now he's at it again. And we've known him in Buffalo for years because of his ties, obviously, and his time with the New England Patriots. What's he been like this year?
He's fantastic. I interview him every week. I host his coach's show on TV. And he's a savant. He knows football inside and out. He's one of the sharpest people I've ever sat down with. No coordinator in the history of the sport, dating back to Leather Helmet, has won 6 Super Bowls. He called all the plays for Brady, made all the adjustments, won all those AFC championships and Super Bowls. So he's been there, done that, had a lot of success against Buffalo in the past, but he's going to be judged as a head coach. So he's got to win these games as a head coach. And the Raiders know that this year they got to win games if they want to be sustainable for years to come here in Las Vegas. So I think Josh McDaniels wants to prove to everyone that he's a good head coach, but he's got to win. And excuses not, the record stands. He has no excuses. I think he has a better roster than last year. It's going to depend on winning games and holding on to leads and coming from behind and winning games that the Raiders probably lose a year or two ago. So there's a lot of pressure on the organization to win, and Josh McDaniels is up to that challenge.
What's he like on the TV show? Because, we always saw him as that guy with Belichick. We saw him at times get a little fiery with Brady in the individual moments, but he's one of those guys that has been around and done so much, but I don't think the general NFL fan base knows much about him. Tell us something about Josh McDaniels that we wouldn't expect to know about a head coach in the NFL who's been around so long.
Yeah, he's a dad and he cares about his kids. He has a son who plays football, and he's deeply invested in his family and his coaches and his team. I mean, he is a guarded guy. I know him, but I know him the way you would know someone on radio in TV. But he's been great to me, and he's great with his players. The players really connect with him because he has an open door policy. He coaches them hard, and they're able to communicate with him. Well, I don't know him that well. I've only had him 2 years here. This is the beginning of his second year. But I'm just blown away. The one thing I want to say about him, with all the coaches I've worked for, this is my 25th year with the Raiders. And it's Norv Turner, Art Shell, Lane Kiffin, go John Gruden, go down the list. This guy is a savant when it comes to defense. He started on defense with the Patriots under Rob Ryan, who's now part of the Raiders as one of the defensive senior assistants here. And I've never interviewed a guy who knows so much about the defensive side of the ball. You think it's Jimmy G and Josh Jacobs. No, he knows every corner, every safety, all the schemes there. So he's a very smart football mind here that now needs to lead the Raiders back to greatness, get them to the playoffs.
So, how aware are guys, or do they care? Like you're dealing with him. There's perception, and it's the reality too that the guys who've been under Belichick have not had the success as head coaches in the NFL. And here he is trying to build with the Raiders. Do you think at all it's got anything to do in his mind of saying, I'm separating myself from what I was in New England? Other guys haven't gotten that done as a head coach with all the success they have. You think a guy like Josh McDaniels thinks about that at all?
Not at all. He had a shot with Denver. He won a playoff game. They had Tebow. It went downhill right after that. He waited a while and then picked the opportunity to come to Las Vegas with the GM, his good friend Dave Ziegler, to try to reorganize the roster and build it in their mind with the success that they've had in the past there. We got a fresh start with Mark Davis and the Raiders. He'll be judged by how many games he wins, how many playoff appearances he has. But Belichick and Brady are going to be a big part of his legacy, and that's something I would celebrate. If I had 6 Super Bowl rings and I coached in all those games, I wouldn't forget it. But now he started scratch with the Raiders, and he's trying to build his own team and do it his way. I really believe Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels are a good team. Remember, they had to deconstruct the former roster and now try to bring in smarter, faster, and more explosive players. We think the Raiders did it in this recent draft.
Let me ask you about Devontae Adams because he goes there. He's with Derek Carr. He's a college guy. Things go the way they go. What has he been like for the Raiders? And what do you think? I mean, we know what a great player he has been in this league. What do you think he can be like in this current state of what the Raiders offense is supposed to
He could be really good. I don't know how many deep balls that Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be able to get to him because Jimmy can make every throw when he has. You saw it with Debo Samuels, Ayuk, George Kittle. He makes every throw you can make. But Carr was a deep thrower, and he liked to throw the bomb to Devontae. And Devontae's a great team player. In game one, Jacoby Myers had 2 touchdowns. He played for the Patriots, and he was the big target in this game because Devontae is always going to be double teamed. But as they were running off the field, the body language of Devontae was outstanding. In the locker room, he was happy for Jacoby, who, by the way, is in protocol this week. Jacoby Myers took a massive hit at the end of that Denver game. And we expect Devontae to be the leader of the team. He's the best player on the Raiders, period. Max Crosby on defense. Wait till you see him play again. He's one of the most improved players in this league from his 4th round selection his rookie year till now. He's a star. and Devontae Adams, along with Josh Jacobs. And the only shot the Raiders are going to have in Buffalo is if the stars show up. Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and Max Crosby. If they all play great games, the Raiders have a puncher's chance, even though they're a 9.5 point underdog. 9.5 points coming in after Buffalo couldn't get anything going against the Jets. But the Jets have a really good defense, as we know.
All right, I'm going to stick with the offense one more time because you're mentioning Jacobs. We know he's been a great back. You saw what Brees Hall did against the Bills. Run defense has been a problem for this organization. He's back, right? He was out for a while, waiting to come back with the Raiders. It looks like he had a decent first game when his opportunities, but can Jacobs take over a game against Buffalo if they get him going?
Absolutely. He took over several games last year for the Raiders, leading the league in rushing. He had an unbelievable year. So if they can get him going, and this is a pretty good offensive line that's back and intact. Last year, this offensive line was an experiment, a work in progress. They brought everyone back, and they had the leading rusher in the league. If the Raiders can establish the run with Josh Jacobs, that'll keep Josh Allen on the sideline, and the Raiders can eat some of that clock. And that would be great for the Raiders. Last thing the Raiders want is to get in a shootout. But if the Raiders do get in a shootout, they have the players to sustain a shootout. They have Devontae, as we said. They have the receivers. Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. If they go four wide with Josh Jacobs in the backfield, they can really spread out the Buffalo Bills. And if they're down 10 points, I have confidence they can get back in the game. But as you said, the Raiders would love nothing more than to run the football, have Josh run it for 120, 130, eat up a lot of that clock and win a tight game.
All right, so defensively, you mentioned Crosby. Give us an indication of who you should be, Buffalo Bills fans should be looking out for on that Raiders defense because they just played the Jets. The Bills offense struggled, turned the ball over 4 times. That's going to be a point of emphasis in this one. Who are the guys Bills fans should have their eye on the Raiders defense?
Okay, so we mentioned Max Crosby, who's fantastic. Tyree Wilson's on the other edge. The other edge, the Raiders took him number 7 overall in the first round. So he's a top pick, and he's going to start because Chandler Jones, as you know, has a personal issue going on. He's not active. Marcus Peters, watch this matchup with Diggs. They came in the same class. Diggs was in the 5th round. Peters was the 16th pick overall, and they know each other well. And Peters is a classic Oakland trash talker. Diggs made all the money. Peters did pretty well with his money, too. I think that matchup's going to be unbelievable. And then on the other side, with Davis, who's a really good receiver, we have a rookie in Jacorian Bennett, 4th round out of Maryland. Fast, he wears number 0. I think that Josh Allen's going to try to attack him. Russell Wilson did last week. He got a pass interference. He gave up a couple of plays, but showed a lot of maturity and played great in the second half of that game. Last week, the Raiders gave up 3 points in the second half to Russell Wilson after Wilson threw 2 touchdowns. It'll be the halftime adjustments from defensive coordinator Patrick Graham that'll give the Raiders a chance to be in this game. The Raider defense with Divine Diablo and Robert Spillane at linebacker going to make sure they stop Josh Allen when he runs. Because we probably heard today, Josh McDaniels talked about Josh Allen, and he thinks the world of him. He thinks he's great and really good, especially as a runner. And the Raiders are going to have to contain Josh Allen as a runner.
I got to ask you about Raider fan base. You've been around this team probably longer than just about anybody in the organization. You know it. You know it from wherever they've been. What's this fan base like? Because you know the Bills. I know you have Western New York ties. You know what the Bills are like in Western New York. It's very provincial, homegrown. The Raiders have been in California, now in Vegas. They're a national brand. They've always been that way. It's hard to say what's the fan base like, but what's it like for you? What's it like in Vegas, and how have the fans responded?
Well, Vegas has been incredible. We're now one of the top revenue teams in all the NFL. Mark Davis, we never wanted to leave Oakland, always wanted to stay in Oakland. The politics in Oakland were brutal and forced the Raiders out. Now they have one of the greatest franchises in professional sports going forward as a revenue base. I mean, this team is going to make a lot of money. The venue, with the concerts are making a lot of money. Legion Stadium is one of the best venues in sports. So that being said, this fan base has been through a lot from Oakland to LA, back to Oakland, now Vegas. So it is a global fan base. And now think of Vegas as a hub. It's just a hub for Raider fans from all over the country, from Western New York to the Midwest to Florida to come to Vegas, have a blast. Not that there was anything wrong with Oakland, but this is different. I mean, this is spectacular. What's going on out here? So the Raiders have a great path in front of them if they can start building a team that can get to the playoffs year in and year out, because they're going to have the revenue to get any player they want. There's no state taxes. And every player, once they play in Vegas, is going to say, I'd love to go there as a free agent. And that path is starting now. They have great fans, and some of them are misunderstood, just like the mafia is misunderstood when they're jumping off a camper covered in mustard and breaking a card table. Great fans. And there'll be a lot of Raider fans coming to this game, I can promise you.
I've mentioned that. Your ties. I'm trying to remember because I used to hear your late night show. Geneseo, am I right?
Geneseo. I went to Geneseo State University, and when I went to college there, I met a lot of guys from Buffalo who became my fraternity brothers and lifelong friends. I'm on a group text, you'll love this, with about 4 or 5 guys from Buffalo. So every day when it's 9 in the morning in Buffalo, at 6 in the morning in Vegas, I'm getting a text from them on the Bills. And they're talking about the Sabres, and they're talking about their passions and love. So I have deep roots in Western New York. Some of the best people I've ever met have been there, and some of the best times I've ever had is in Buffalo. It could be a Goo Goo Dolls concert. It could be downtown. It could be at the Big Tree right there outside the stadium. I love Buffalo. And I would love to see Buffalo do great things every game they play, except when they're playing the Raiders. Again, I picked them to go to the Super Bowl and win the last 2 years. I couldn't do it again. I couldn't go 0 for 3. I think the Bills are going to be a tough out for everybody. I have them going deep in the playoffs again.
And I want to ask one last thing because I always want to know the perception. And you have a tie here to Western New York. You follow what the Bills are doing. But Josh Allen, we know he's been great. He's been close. And then this year he gets it started off really bad on opening day. The perception is maybe Allen is slipping a little or is not right at that elite level. You've watched this league for a long time, JT. When you see this guy, Monday night included, what do you see? And what do you think can happen with Josh Allen?
I think he is a great player. Most every fan base would love to have him as their starter. Again, we're happy with Jimmy Garoppolo here. There's Patrick Mahomes. There's Joe Burrow. Justin Herbert's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen, ever, live. I'll put him up there with Elway, the times I've seen him as a young Elway. But Josh Allen is fantastic. And any Buffalo Bill fan that thinks otherwise, who wants to bust his back and try to run him out of town and make it difficult, you'd be ridiculously dumb. He's going to have a really long career in Buffalo. He's going to be in a position to win multiple championships. He's going through a little bit of a rut now. I hope he has that rut or a little bit of it for one more week. But this guy's going to be dominant for another 10 years to come, and the Bills are in great hands with him.
Well, we really appreciate your time. I always say this. I know you do a ton. So let everybody know, Raiders fans, Bills fans, especially this week, where they can see you, where they can hear you, what you got going on that they can track you down.
I'm on Raider Nation Radio, which is on every weekday from noon to 2, 3 to 5 Eastern. You can download that for free on the Raiders app. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Mad Dog Sports Radio. You can catch me at night, Sunday and Monday night, and other times on Mad Dog. I host the Coach's Television Show and a couple of podcasts for the Raiders. So I'm very blessed coming from Geneseo State University, 27 years on the radio uninterrupted. And I hope my best content is in front of me. And it's a pleasure to be on with you. And I'm looking forward to having you on my show tomorrow.
I would love it. We will be all set to go. And I love the energy. I love the insight you gave us on the Raiders. And we look forward to a great matchup coming up on Sunday.
Thanks, my friend. I appreciate it.
All right, there we go. JT the Brick talking about the Raiders getting ready to play the Bills coming up on Sunday. We thank all of you for watching again. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time here on the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel.